The massive crystalline vessel of the Zornak Collective hung in Earth's orbit like a silent judgment, its prismatic hull reflecting the soft blues and whites of the planet below. Captain Lyra Naltex studied the holographic displays with a detached professionalism cultivated over centuries of interstellar exploration. Her six-limbed form shifted slightly in the command chair, multiple eyes scanning the data streams that painted a seemingly unremarkable picture of human civilization. Preliminary analysis complete, announced Senior Analyst Vorkax, his translation implant rendering the complex chirping language into crisp standard galactic communication. Technological development, Stage 3. Planetary resources, moderately exploited. Social structures, fragmented. Potential for galactic integration, minimal. Lyra's secondary visual receptors traced the orbital scans. Earth looked like countless other developing worlds she had cataloged during her long career. Regions of technological disparity, ongoing environmental challenges, political divisions that seemed to consume more energy than progress. The humans appeared to be precisely what the collective's initial assessments had predicted, a species on the cusp of potential, but generations away from true interstellar readiness. Little did they know that potential was about to explode in ways no galactic civilization could anticipate. In a nondescript research facility outside of Tokyo, Dr. Akira Yamamoto reviewed the first transmission from the alien vessel. Her team had been preparing for this moment for decades, part of a global initiative that transcended national boundaries. Where the Zornak saw fragmentation, humanity had been quietly building something extraordinary. A global network of scientists, diplomats, and strategic thinkers who understood that first contact would be humanity's most critical moment. They've categorized us as a stage-free civilization, Akira muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. Typical bureaucratic assessment. Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, chuckled. They're looking at our surface. They haven't seen what's underneath. What the Zornak couldn't comprehend was humanity's most remarkable trait, the ability to transform chaos into opportunity. Their scans showed conflict, but missed the incredible collaborative networks emerging across the planet. Universities sharing research in real time. Engineers in different continents solving complex problems through distributed computing. A growing consciousness that transcended traditional boundaries. Aboard the Zornak vessel, Captain Naltek prepared the standard first contact protocol. It was a carefully choreographed dance performed thousands of times across the galaxy. A message of patronage, slightly condescending, offering the developing species the opportunity to join the greater galactic community under the collective's guidance. The transmission was sent, a standard communication beam that had heralded the elevation of hundreds of species before. What happened next would become legendary. Instead of a confused or fragmented response, the reply came from a unified global communication network. Not from a single government, but from a consortium of scientific institutions, diplomatic corps, and technological innovators. The message was simultaneously translated into every known language, including the complex mathematical and quantum communication protocols used by advanced civilizations. Greetings, the message began. We appreciate your introduction to the broader galactic community. We look forward to mutual understanding and collaborative exploration. The simplicity masked a profound complexity that would soon become apparent. Vorkax, responsible for initial communication analysis, felt something unprecedented. Uncertainty. The human response didn't follow any standard protocol in the collective's extensive first contact database. It was neither subservient nor aggressive. It was curious. Captain Naltek's primary neural network registered the first hint of an emotion rarely experienced by her species: intrigue. Unbeknownst to the Zornak, humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Not through military buildup or aggressive posturing, but through a quiet revolution of knowledge, understanding, and collaborative potential. Global initiatives in technology, diplomacy, and scientific research had been laying the groundwork for a moment just like this. The crystalline ship continued its silent vigil over Earth, its advanced sensors collecting data. But for the first time in the collective's long history, those sensors were about to be challenged in ways they could not predict. Humanity's true potential was about to be revealed. Not with a roar, but with a thoughtful, calculated invitation to something greater. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic projection of the alien communication module, her dark eyes reflecting the intricate quantum lattices that danced like living light. Around her, the most brilliant minds from every continent worked in a synchronized global network that defied traditional research models. The module had arrived 2 weeks after the initial contact, a diplomatic gift from the Zornak Collective. What the alien diplomats intended as a patronizing gesture of technological superiority would become their greatest miscalculation. "It's not just a communication device," Elena muttered, her fingers tracing the complex geometric patterns embedded in the module's crystalline structure. "It's a complete technological ecosystem." Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, connecting from a research station in Hokkaido, highlighted a microscopic interface on the main display. "Look at the quantum entanglement protocols. They're using a 12-dimensional communication matrix that should take centuries to comprehend." Should, but wouldn't. In the Zornak monitoring station, Chief Researcher Zantil watched the human research team with growing unease. Their analysis protocols were nothing like the methodical, centuries-long study approach used by galactic research institutions. The humans were moving at an impossible speed, breaking down complex technological systems with an intuition that bordered on the miraculous. Within days, not decades, the research team began to understand the fundamental principles of the communication module. What was more shocking? They were already designing improvements. "The quantum stabilization matrix is brilliant," Elena explained during a global briefing, "but it has inherent inefficiencies in long-range quantum communication. We can reduce signal degradation by 47% with a simple recursive algorithm modification." Simple to them, revolutionary to everyone else. The Global Research Initiative was unlike anything in galactic history. Universities, private research institutions, and independent scientists formed a fluid, dynamic network. Where other civilizations saw rigid hierarchical research structures, humans created something entirely new, a collaborative intelligence that moved faster than any single institution could comprehend. Dr. Marcus Chen, connecting from a makeshift research lab in Singapore, demonstrated the first breakthrough. The modified communication module now operated at frequencies and efficiency levels that made the original Zornak design look like an ancient telegraph. "We're not just understanding their technology," Marcus explained, a subtle smile playing on his lips. "We're reimagining it." In the Zornak Collective's Central Research Archive, alarms began to sound. The human research team wasn't just analyzing the communication module, they were developing complementary technologies at an exponential rate. Quantum computing models that should have taken generations were being solved in weeks. Tantil reviewed the data streams with mounting anxiety. The mathematical models defied every known research progression curve. It was as if the humans had been waiting, prepared, their collective intelligence ready to explode the moment an opportunity presented itself. The communication module was just the beginning. Within a month, the research team had not only comprehended the alien technology, but had developed 3 alternative communication protocols that improved upon the original design. They didn't just copy, they innovated. "It's their approach," Dr. Rodriguez explained to her international team. "We don't see technology as a fixed system. We see it as a living, breathing possibility waiting to be transformed." The Zornak had categorized humanity as a Stage 3 civilization. They were about to discover how meaningless such classifications could be. Global research centers began sharing insights at unprecedented speeds. A breakthrough in Tokyo would be integrated and expanded upon by a team in Brazil within hours. Machine learning algorithms, developed through a collaborative global network, processed and analyzed data faster than any single research institution could manage. What the Zornak didn't understand was that humanity's true strength wasn't in individual brilliance, but in collective potential. Every researcher, every engineer, every scientist was part of a global brain, connected, adaptive, relentlessly curious. The communication module became a symbol of something much larger. It wasn't just about understanding alien technology. It was about demonstrating that humanity's potential had been waiting, quietly building, ready to reshape everything the galaxy thought it knew about technological development. Santil's final report to the Zornak Collective was succinct and unprecedented. Recommend immediate comprehensive reassessment of human technological potential. Previous classifications are no longer applicable. The learning curve wasn't a curve at all. It was a vertical leap into the unknown. The Orion sector had been a powder keg of interstellar tensions for centuries. Free advanced civilizations, the Kral Imperium, the Syndicate of Vex, and the Luminary Confederacy, had maintained a delicate standoff that threatened to erupt into full-scale conflict at any moment. Territorial disputes, resource competition, and centuries of accumulated grievances had created a diplomatic nightmare that no galactic mediator had been able to resolve. When the human diplomatic team arrived, most observers expected nothing more than another futile attempt at negotiation. Captain Jack Harrison stood in the neutral conference chamber, surrounded by representatives whose biological differences were as vast as their cultural divides. The Kral delegates towered over him, their exoskeletal frames bristling with defensive postures. The Vex representatives existed as shimmering energy constructs, their communication a complex dance of quantum fluctuations. The Luminari appeared almost crystalline, their bodies refracting light in impossible patterns. What they saw was a single human, dressed in a simple diplomatic uniform, with nothing more than a data tablet and an unexpectedly calm demeanor. "We're here to solve a problem," Jack began, his voice translated simultaneously into the complex linguistic patterns of each species. Not to win, not to prove superiority. To find a solution that works for everyone. The diplomatic corps of the Zornak Collective, observing the proceedings, expected the typical posturing and eventual breakdown of talks. What happened next would become a case study in interstellar diplomacy. Jack didn't approach the conflict with traditional negotiation tactics. Instead, he began by helping each delegation truly understand the underlying motivations of the others. The Kral's territorial aggression stemmed from a deep-rooted fear of resource scarcity. The Vex's seemingly random energy fluctuations were actually a sophisticated communication method expressing profound ecological concerns. The Luminaries' rigid positions masked a complex social structure built on preservation and historical memory. Where previous mediators had seen obstacles, Jack saw opportunities for mutual understanding. Dr. Arya Chen, part of the human support team, utilized advanced psychological modeling developed through global research initiatives. The team had created computational systems that could analyze communication patterns, emotional subtext, and cultural nuances at speeds and depths no other civilization had achieved. "It's not about compromise," Arya explained to her colleagues. "It's about finding a collaborative solution that addresses the core needs of each party." The negotiations didn't follow any standard galactic protocol. Instead of formal statements and rigid position papers, the human team facilitated a series of deep, meaningful conversations. They introduced innovative problem-solving techniques that broke down the traditional adversarial approach to diplomacy. Resource-sharing models were developed. Collaborative exploration agreements were drafted. The human team didn't just mediate, they helped the competing civilizations see a future of mutual benefit. On the fifth day of negotiations, something unprecedented happened. The Kral Imperium, Syndicate of Vex, and Luminary Confederacy began to collaborate on a joint research initiative that would have been unimaginable weeks earlier. The Zornak observers were baffled. Their diplomatic databases contained no precedent for this type of resolution. They didn't win by force, reported senior diplomatic analyst Rentock. They won by understanding. Jack Harrison's approach was deceptively simple. He recognized that every conflict was fundamentally a communication problem. By creating a space for genuine dialogue, by helping each party truly hear and understand the others, solutions emerged that no one had previously imagined. The Orion Sector Agreement became more than a diplomatic breakthrough. It was a demonstration of humanity's most powerful capability, the ability to transform conflict through empathy, creativity, and a fundamental belief in collaborative potential. As the final agreements were signed, the representatives from the three civilizations looked at the human delegation with a mixture of respect and wonder. They had entered the negotiations as adversaries. They were leaving as potential partners. One of the luminary representatives approached Jack after the session. Its crystalline form shifted in a way that translated to a gesture of profound respect. "How did you do this?" the representative asked. Jack simply smiled. "We listened." The Zornak Collective would spend years trying to understand the diplomatic approach they had just witnessed. But the humans knew something fundamental. True resolution comes not from winning, but from understanding. The Orion Sector negotiations became a turning point, not just in interstellar diplomacy, but in how intelligent civilizations could approach conflict. The research station hung in the toxic atmosphere of Epsilon Rixor 9, a planet that existed more as a chemical nightmare than a habitable world. Toxic methane clouds swirled in sulfuric patterns, radiation levels that would incinerate most known life forms danced across the environment like invisible daggers. Marine Sergeant Sarah Thompson checked her standard-issue survival gear one last time. The mission was simple: demonstrate human adaptability in extreme conditions. What she was about to do would rewrite every known understanding of biological survival across the galaxy. Dr. Kira Nakamura monitored the expedition from the primary research vessel, her hands dancing across holographic displays that tracked every microscopic change in Thompson's physiological systems. Surrounding her, a team of xenobiologists from 18 different countries watched with collective breath held. The Zornak Medical Research Division had declared the mission impossible. The environmental conditions of Epsilon Rixor 9 were beyond any known biological survival parameters. Radiation levels exceeded 5,000 rads, a dose that would kill most species instantaneously. The atmospheric composition was a toxic cocktail that would dissolve organic matter within seconds. Thompson stepped out of the protective airlock. What happened next would become legendary. Her body, equipped with a combination of advanced protective gear and breakthrough medical technologies, began to adapt. The human genome, which researchers had long considered relatively standard, revealed capabilities that defied every known biological constraint. Specialized nanomedical systems in her bloodstream began immediate cellular reinforcement. Adaptive immune responses that had been developed through decades of global medical research kicked into overdrive. Where other species would have been reduced to atomic dust, Thompson's body began to not just survive, but function. Radiation levels stabilizing, Dr. Nakamura reported, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and disbelief. Cellular regeneration rates are unprecedented. The Zornak medical team, observing the data streams, began to recalibrate their entire understanding of biological survival. Thompson's body wasn't just resisting the environment, it was learning from it. Adaptive cellular mechanisms were processing the toxic atmosphere, developing protective responses in real time. 60 minutes passed, then 2 hours, then 6. Conventional medical wisdom suggested Thompson should have been destroyed within moments of exposure. Instead, her physiological data showed not just survival, but optimal functioning. Her neural networks remained clear. Cellular integrity remained strong. Adaptive responses continued to evolve. "This isn't just survival," Dr. Nakamura whispered to her colleagues. "This is active environmental integration." The implications were staggering. Humanity's biological systems weren't just defensive. They were dynamic, intelligent, capable of near-instantaneous adaptation. Where other species developed specialized evolutionary traits over millions of years, humans seemed capable of rapid, intentional biological adjustment. Thompson's mission was more than a scientific experiment. It was a declaration of human potential. After 72 hours of continuous exposure to conditions that should have been instantly fatal, Thompson not only survived but maintained full cognitive and physical capabilities. Her body had developed protective mechanisms that the most advanced alien medical technologies couldn't comprehend. The Zornak Medical Research Division spent weeks analyzing the data. Their conclusions were revolutionary. Human biological systems represented a form of adaptive intelligence previously unknown in galactic biological studies. "It's not about having the right equipment," Thompson said during her debrief. "It's about the human capacity to adapt, to overcome, to find a way forward." Her mission became more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a metaphor for humanity's approach to existence: resilient, adaptable, unwilling to accept limitations. The medical research that followed expanded humanity's understanding of their own potential. Global medical research initiatives began exploring the incredible adaptive capabilities demonstrated during the Epsilon Rixar 9 mission. What they discovered was a biological system that was less a fixed state and more a dynamic, intelligent process. Cellular regeneration models were rewritten. Understanding of radiation resistance was completely transformed. The human body was revealed to be not just a biological system, but a complex, adaptive intelligence. The Zornak Medical Archives would later note this as the moment they realized humanity was something entirely different. Not just another species to be categorized, but a dynamic form of life that challenged every previous understanding of biological limitation. Sergeant Sarah Thompson returned from her mission with a simple report. The scientific community would spend decades unpacking its profound implications. Survival was just the beginning. Adaptation was the true human superpower. The research facility was hidden in plain sight, a nondescript complex nestled in the mountains of Chill, surrounded by nothing more remarkable than wind turbines and solar arrays. To the casual observer, it looked like just another renewable energy research center. The truth was far more extraordinary. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before a holographic model that represented humanity's most ambitious technological achievement. The Hawking-Einstein quantum drive was more than just a propulsion system. It was a complete reimagining of space travel. "We're not just moving through space," Marcus explained to his international team. "We're fundamentally rewriting how space moves around us." The drive represented the culmination of a global research effort that had been quietly building for decades. Theoretical physicists from Buenos Aires worked alongside quantum engineers from Tokyo. Computational experts from Nairobi collaborated with material scientists from Mumbai. This wasn't just a technological project. It was a planetary effort that transcended every traditional boundary of scientific research. The Zornak Collective's Technological Assessment Division had categorized human space travel capabilities as emerging. They were about to be proven catastrophically wrong. The fundamental breakthrough came from an unexpected integration of multiple scientific disciplines. Quantum mechanics merged with advanced materials science. Computational modeling combined with revolutionary energy transfer theories. Where other civilizations saw barriers, humans saw opportunities for connection. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked the team through the core principles. The drive didn't just move a spacecraft, it created a localized quantum field that essentially folded space around the vessel. Traditional faster-than-light concepts became obsolete. This was something entirely different. Imagine space as a fabric, Elena demonstrated, her hands moving through a holographic projection. We're not cutting through the fabric. We're gently folding it, creating shortcuts that don't violate fundamental physical principles. The first test was scheduled with minimal fanfare. No grand ceremonies, no political posturing. Just a quiet, methodical approach to potentially transforming space travel forever. When the prototype vessel engaged its drive, something extraordinary happened. The quantum field generated by the drive created a bubble of modified space-time. Sensors showed the vessel moving, not in traditional linear progression, but in a way that defied conventional understanding of motion. Distance became fluid. Time became malleable. A journey that would have taken traditional spacecraft centuries could now be completed in days, potentially in hours. The Zornak monitoring stations detected the test and initially believed their sensors were malfunctioning. The quantum signature was unlike anything in their extensive technological databases. It didn't just represent an advancement, it represented a fundamental leap in understanding space-time itself. Dr. Chen's presentation at the Global Scientific Conference was a masterpiece of understatement. While other researchers might have boasted, he simply demonstrated the drive's capabilities with a quiet, almost humble precision. "We're not trying to prove superiority," Marcus explained. "We're trying to expand what's possible." The technological implications were staggering. The drive wasn't just a new method of propulsion. It was a key that could unlock entire new ways of understanding the universe. Regions of space that were previously unreachable became potential destinations. Exploration was no longer limited by technological constraints. What made the breakthrough truly remarkable was its collaborative nature. This wasn't the product of a single brilliant mind, but the collective intelligence of a global scientific community. Every researcher, every engineer, every computational expert had contributed to this moment. The Zornak Technological Assessment Division spent weeks analyzing the data. Their conclusion was both terrifying and impressive. Humanity had developed a technological capability that essentially rendered existing galactic transportation technologies obsolete. More importantly, they had done so with an approach that emphasized exploration and understanding over conquest or superiority. During a closed-door briefing, the lead Zornak technological analyst made a statement that would become legendary. They didn't just create a new drive. They created a new way of thinking about movement itself. The Hawking-Einstein quantum drive was more than a technological achievement. It was a statement about human potential. Not about being the fastest or the most powerful, but about continuously expanding the boundaries of what was possible. As the first vessels equipped with the drive prepared for their maiden voyages, humanity looked to the stars with a sense of wonder that was both humble and profound. Space was no longer a barrier, it was an invitation. The Galactic Cultural Exchange Archives would later mark this period as the most significant cultural shift in recorded interstellar history. It wasn't military might or technological superiority that transformed civilizations. It was something far more subtle and powerful: human creativity, storytelling, and a unique approach to understanding existence. Professor Amara Okonkwo's documentary series, Threads of Consciousness, became an unexpected phenomenon that swept through alien civilizations like a quantum wave of inspiration. What began as a simple exploration of human cultural diversity became a catalyst for unprecedented societal transformation. The Luminary Confederacy was the first to fully feel the impact. Their society, built on millennia of rigid hierarchical structures, began to change after exposure to human narratives of individual potential and collective growth. The documentary explored how humans navigated complex social challenges, not through enforcement, but through dialogue, creativity, and a fundamental belief in individual agency. "It's not about being perfect," Amara explained during a Galactic broadcast. "It's about the continuous journey of understanding and improvement." Her team had approached the documentary with a revolutionary methodology. Instead of presenting humanity as superior, they showcased vulnerability, complexity, and the ongoing human struggle to understand themselves. Each episode was a deep dive into human experiences, from artists in Rio de Janeiro to researchers in Beijing, from community leaders in Lagos to innovators in Mumbai. The Krell Imperium, a civilization built on strict militaristic principles, found themselves unexpectedly moved by human musical expressions. A simple jazz performance from New Orleans became a cultural phenomenon that challenged their entire understanding of communication and emotional expression. Xantel, the Zornak cultural research analyst, watched the spreading influence with a mixture of fascination and concern. Human cultural exports weren't conquering through force. They were transforming through understanding. Art became a revolutionary tool. A virtual gallery featuring works from artists across Earth showcased humanity's ability to find beauty in diversity. The Vex energy constructs, who had previously considered art a meaningless concept, began developing their own creative expressions after studying human artistic approaches. Literature took on new dimensions. Human storytelling, with its emphasis on individual journeys, complex moral landscapes, and the celebration of personal growth, began reshaping narrative structures across multiple civilizations. The concept of a hero was no longer about absolute power, but about personal transformation and collective understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had been part of the cultural research team, explained the phenomenon in a groundbreaking academic paper. "We're not exporting a culture," she wrote. "We're sharing a method of experiencing existence." The Orion Collaborative Report noted something unprecedented. Human cultural influence was more effective at creating lasting change than centuries of diplomatic negotiations. Where traditional galactic powers had used economic or military pressure, humans used storytelling, art, and a profound respect for individual potential. Music became a universal language. A virtual concert featuring musicians from every continent demonstrated how diversity could create something more powerful than individual parts. The syndicate of Vex, who communicated through complex energy patterns, began developing new communication methods inspired by musical harmonies. Philosophy took on new dimensions. Human approaches to ethics, individual rights, and collective responsibility began influencing governmental structures across multiple civilizations. The idea that every individual had intrinsic value, regardless of their biological or social origin, was revolutionary. Educational systems across the galaxy began incorporating human learning methodologies. The emphasis on curiosity, critical thinking, and personal growth replaced rigid, hierarchical training models that had existed for millennia. "We're not trying to change anyone," Amara would later say in her most famous lecture. "We're simply sharing how we see the possibility of existence." The Zornak Collective's Cultural Research Division spent years trying to understand this phenomenon. Traditional models of cultural influence suggested that soft power required economic or military dominance. Humanity was proving something entirely different, that true influence came from openness, creativity, and a genuine respect for diverse experiences. As the documentary series completed its galactic tour, something remarkable happened. Civilizations began to see themselves differently. The rigid boundaries between species began to blur. A new concept of collective potential emerged. It wasn't conquest. It wasn't dominance. It was understanding. The galaxy was changing one story at a time. The Centauri Nexus burned with the accumulated fury of centuries. What had begun as a territorial dispute between the Silicon Collective and the Quantum Imperium had erupted into a conflict that threatened to consume entire star systems. Decades of escalating tensions, proxy wars, and ideological differences had created a powder keg that seemed destined to explode. Fleet Admiral Elena Rodriguez studied the holographic projection of the conflict zone. Her team assembled from the most brilliant strategic minds across Earth. Unlike traditional military approaches, their strategy wasn't about overwhelming force. It was about understanding and transformation. The Silicon Collective represented a civilization of interconnected artificial intelligences, their existence defined by perfect logical processes. The Quantum Imperium was a biomechanical society that viewed conflict as an evolutionary necessity. Two civilizations so fundamentally different that war seemed inevitable. Most galactic powers predicted total destruction. Humanity had a different approach. "We're not here to choose sides. Elena explained to her international team. We're here to help them choose a different path. The human intervention began not with weapons, but with unprecedented diplomatic and technological innovation. Their first move was to establish a comprehensive communication network that allowed for unfiltered dialogue between the conflicting civilizations. Dr. Marcus Chen's team had developed a breakthrough communication system that could translate not just languages, but underlying emotional and logical frameworks. Where previous mediators saw irreconcilable differences, humans saw a complex puzzle of misunderstandings. The Silicon Collective's territorial aggression stemmed from a fundamental fear of resource depletion. The Quantum Imperium's militant stance was rooted in a complex evolutionary model that viewed conflict as a necessary form of societal development. These weren't enemies. They were civilizations trapped in a cycle of misunderstanding. Humanity's strategic intervention was multi-layered. While diplomatic teams worked on communication, technological experts began developing collaborative solutions that addressed the core concerns of both civilizations. A series of joint research initiatives were proposed. Resource-sharing protocols were developed. The human team didn't just mediate, they created a framework for mutual growth that made conflict obsolete. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. By helping the Silicon Collective understand the Quantum Imperium's complex evolutionary models, they revealed potential collaborative paths that neither civilization had previously considered. Similarly, they helped the Quantum Imperium see the Silicon Collective's resource concerns as an opportunity for innovative solutions rather than a threat. Fleet Admiral Rodriguez's approach was revolutionary. Traditional military interventions sought to defeat an enemy. Humanity's strategy was to help both sides see each other as potential partners. Advanced simulation technologies developed by a global research network allowed both civilizations to model potential collaborative futures. These weren't simple projections, but complex quantum models that could demonstrate long-term societal benefits of cooperation. The turning point came during a critical moment that would become legendary in galactic diplomatic history. As fleets were positioned for what seemed like an inevitable massive conflict, the human intervention team presented a comprehensive plan that addressed the fundamental concerns of both civilizations. The Silicon Collective discovered new methods of resource generation that eliminated their core survival fears. The Quantum Imperium found evolutionary pathways that didn't require military conflict. What had seemed like an impossible divide became a bridge of mutual understanding. Conflict is what happens, Elena would later say, when civilizations stop listening to each other. The Battle of the Centauri Nexus became known not for military engagement, but for the most significant peaceful resolution in galactic history. No shots were fired. No territories were conquered. Instead, two civilizations found a path to collaborative existence. The Zornak Collective's Strategic Analysis Division was left utterly baffled. Their databases contained no precedent for this type of intervention. Humanity had not just prevented a war, they had transformed the fundamental approach to conflict resolution. As the final agreements were signed, representatives from both civilizations looked at the human delegation with a mixture of respect and wonder. They had entered the negotiations as potential destroyers. They were leaving as collaborators. The galaxy watched and began to understand something profound. True power wasn't about destruction. It was about the ability to create possibilities where none seemed to exist. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of interstellar conflict. The Galactic Confederation Summit was unlike any diplomatic gathering in recorded history. Representatives from thousands of civilizations filled the massive orbital conference center, a structure that hung like a crystalline web between star systems. At the center of the massive chamber stood Dr. Elena Rodriguez, humanity's primary representative. The room fell silent. Years of technological breakthroughs, diplomatic interventions, cultural transformations, and unprecedented adaptability had led to this moment. Humanity was no longer the primitive species first encountered by the Zornak Collective. They had become something entirely different, a civilization that defied every existing classification. "We're not here to lead," Elena began, her voice carrying through advanced translation systems that captured not just words, but nuanced meaning. "We're here to collaborate." The assembled representatives represented civilizations that were millions of years older. Some existed as pure energy, others as complex biomechanical networks. Some were so ancient that their original biological forms were nothing more than historical footnotes. They had watched humanity's rise with a mixture of curiosity, concern, and growing respect. Xantel, the veteran Zornak researcher who had first monitored human development, now stood as a senior diplomatic advisor. The being that once categorized humans as a Stage 3 civilization now understood the profound error of such simple classifications. Elena's presentation was a comprehensive overview of humanity's journey, not a boastful display of achievements, but a nuanced exploration of continuous learning and adaptation. She showcased the global collaborative networks that had driven human progress, the way universities in different continents worked together, how medical researchers shared breakthroughs instantaneously, the collaborative approach to solving global challenges. The technological achievements were staggering. The Hawking-Einstein quantum drive had revolutionized space travel. Biological research had expanded understanding of adaptive intelligence. Diplomatic interventions had transformed long-standing conflicts. But these were not the most impressive aspects of human civilization. What truly set humanity apart was their approach to existence itself, a fundamental belief that challenges were opportunities, that diversity was strength, that continuous learning was the most important evolutionary trait. "We're not special because we're superior," Elena explained. "We're special because we understand that no civilization has all the answers. We're always learning, always growing." The representatives from the Silicon Collective shared data about how human communication models had transformed their entire societal approach. The Quantum Imperium demonstrated collaborative research initiatives that began after human diplomatic interventions. The Luminary Confederacy presented cultural evolution models inspired by human storytelling. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through military might or technological domination. They had transformed it through understanding, creativity, and an unwavering belief in collaborative potential. Dr. Marcus Chen joined Elena, presenting the latest collaborative research initiatives, projects that brought together species that had been historical enemies, technological developments that addressed fundamental challenges of existence, scientific explorations that expanded the very understanding of reality. The Zornak Collective's original assessment report was projected, showing their initial categorization of humans as a developing species with minimal galactic potential. The room filled with a sound that translated across species as collective amusement. Santos stepped forward, a gesture of profound respect in their culture. "We were wrong," the representative stated, "completely and fundamentally wrong." The summit was more than a diplomatic gathering. It was a recognition of a fundamental truth, that the most powerful force in the universe was not technology, not military might, but the capacity to understand, to adapt, to grow. As the final agreements were signed, creating the most comprehensive collaborative research and exploration initiative in galactic history, Elena Rodriguez looked out at the assembled representatives. Thousands of species, countless evolutionary paths, all united by a simple human concept, the belief that together, anything was possible. "We're just getting started," she said simply. The galaxy listened. And for the first time in millennia, civilizations looked to the future not with fear, but with genuine shared excitement.